Hey guys, this is an appreciation podcast episode, so I want you to go ahead and tag the Fredericks and the Ellises because I need them to know how much their transparency and vulnerability about their respective marriages have helped so many people. Many of us come from a generation where our parents don't really teach us much about healthy relationships. We kind of have to figure it out on our own and go through a lot of different trials and errors to get it. Here we have two couples with two different experiences, but the same vision building healthy and happy marriages. In a world where healthy and happy relationships are subjective, they've shown so many people that they are not alone. And as a result, so many people are taking better care of themselves and their relationships. So, shout out to you guys. Y'all are doing your thing. I respect it so much. Keep doing the good work. So, this week's podcast episode is different for a couple of different reasons. Well, one, I'm always approaching stuff about relationships from an educational perspective, and I don't really open up too much about myself. But after reading their books, I got to say I've gotten a little excited about some of their experiences because it really made me feel and made me understand that I'm not alone. And I wanted to share that with you guys this week because many of you might be going through different stuff in your relationships and you might not even know that, hey, most of us go through this. So I want y'all to sit back, listen to the episode, tell me what you think. But more than anything, of course, I want you to tag the Ellises and tag the Fredericks. Khadeen and Devale and Melissa and Kevin have really encouraged me to open up a little bit more about some of the things that I've experienced, just for the main fact that it seems like we've all gone through the same thing. So let's jump into the meat and potatoes, okay? The first thing I wanted to talk about was being raised churchy. Melissa and Kevin talked about that in their book, Marriage Be Hard. And there were so many different expectations around marriage, especially as it pertained to women. And Kevin even admitted it that a lot of the things that us women would face in the church, the guys didn't really feel that level of pressure. Yeah, they did go through their stuff, but it was not on the same level as women. As women, we were expected to carry ourselves a certain way. We were supposed to dress a certain way, act a certain way, walk a certain way. You don't believe me? Okay. My experience, I wasn't allowed to wear earrings, makeup, pants, get my nails done, painted any bright colors, couldn't color my hair, and at a certain point couldn't straighten my hair. And if you were to go and do any of these things, you'd be ostracized from the church. They would literally put you on the back bench, which, for people who don't know, simply means that whatever ministries you are a part of, you would no longer be a part of for a certain amount of time. So if you used to sing in the choir, no more singing in the choir. If you used to be an usher, no more ushering. If you used to be a preacher, no more preaching. You get the gist. But how I was raised in the church did not align with how I envisioned my wedding. It did not align. I envisioned a low cut wedding dress, makeup and earrings. And I know for a fact that would not fly in the church that I grew up in. And then to top it off, I didn't even want to get married in the physical building. I did not want to get married in a church. And now I know my reasons were not the greatest, but to keep it a buck, I saw my parents' marriage and so many other marriages go through so much turmoil. And I'm like, why would I want to go and get married in a church when everybody who I know who got married in the church, their relationship failed? I'm going to get married outside. Since I was little, I've always wanted to get married outside. So those two things, the dress and outside, it just, for me, it did not align with what I knew the church would accept and appreciate. Another thing that I had to mentally prepare myself for was learning how to compromise, especially when you've been conditioned to think one way. So a little bit about me. When I was younger, I used to see my mother and my father argue all the time. It was almost normal. The thing that would sit uncomfortably with me was the fact that my mother was the primary breadwinner, but my father would they'd be talking to her outside his neck. And I decided at a very young age that it didn't matter what the financial situation. I was not gonna make no man, no husband, nobody talk to me out of their neck. It was just not going to happen. I was gonna be in control. I was gonna be the boss. I was gonna be running the show. And if you had a problem with that, there's a door you could go. That's how my mindset was. And I remember once my husband and I got married, we would have these rough tit for tat disagreements and arguments. And I remember one day my husband was just kind of like at his wits' end and he kind of shut it down and he was like, Melissa, I am not your father. That just put so much into perspective for me. That helped me understand that a lot of the trauma that I experienced as a kid, I was still holding on to. And I was pushing that on him, not realizing that he was not my father. Khadeen and Devale talk about how they were raised and how very different they were raised and how they had to learn to compromise to get on the same page. And granted, it took a long time. They didn't always get it right. They explained that for the first 5 years of their marriage, it was complete hell. It was literally a tug of war because nobody wanted to compromise. Everybody wanted their way, and it just couldn't work. Another thing that I didn't learn was that you had to fight fear. I was not fighting fear, y'all. And for those of you who know me or knew me from the past, y'all knew that I had a mouth. I had a mouth. I would talk first and think later. And granted, oh my gosh, I know I've ruined so many friendships because of that. And I look back at it now and I'm like, oh, I could just kick myself. But you know what? I've learned from that and I've been able to elevate and get to another place. But back then, I could not handle the idea of him having one up on me. I couldn't handle the idea of him winning. It felt wrong. I felt like I always had to win because if he was winning, that was his way of trying to play me. I didn't understand that our partnership was based on teamwork and not trying to prove who was better. Again, a lot of that really stemmed from what I saw growing up. It had a lot to do with proving your worth, proving and showing your dominance. And I just felt like that was normal and that's what it was supposed to be. And I was terribly wrong, terribly wrong. Another thing that I was not prepared for was the fact that things change once kids get in the picture. One of the biggest things that I think changed was time management. It becomes such an even bigger deal. We've had plenty of arguments and disagreements because even though we had kids, things still needed to get done. You know, still had to go to work, still had to pay the bills, still had to do these extra errands, still had to do all this stuff in addition to the kids. So we had to learn to balance that, learn to compromise. And we actually had to move away from the ideology that as a woman, I was supposed to stay home and take care of the kids, and he was supposed to go out there and work. We had to move away from that because it was not in line with any of our goals and any of our visions. And quite frankly, growing up, I used to always think I could have it all. Why can't I have a kid and be the biggest boss chick on the block? Like, why do I have to choose one? And so many of us women are always put in positions like that where we have to choose one or the other. It's almost an issue when it's time for both. And later on in this episode, I'm going to share a story about me almost having to choose between my family and my job. I'm going to tell you about that in a second. Just hold on one second. Another thing I was not prepared for was the fact that our goals won't always align. I know you're probably thinking, well, Mel, why would you get married to somebody whose goals and visions don't line up with yours? That's not what I'm saying. From a values perspective, we're on the same page. We're always on the same page where values are concerned. But it's our personal desires that sometimes they don't align. It took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And the same with my husband. When we both met each other, we were in different stages of our lives. We were working traditional jobs. And as time went on, we realized that it wasn't necessarily for us. So our goals started to change. I'm someone who likes to be in front of the camera, or at least I'm trying to get more comfortable with being in front of the camera. Whereas my husband, he wants to be behind it, away from it, around the corner from it, nowhere near it. It is not his thing. The good thing about our goals changing is the fact that we both understood early in the relationship that the traditional 9 to 5 was just not going to work for us. It just was not sustainable for the type of relationship we had, but it helped us to get to where we are now. So we just had to do what had to be done until we could get to where we wanted to be. Another thing was loving through the pain. God knows there were so many disagreements and so many hurt feelings, but the misconception is that marriage equals perfection, and that's the furthest from the truth. Come on, guys. I feel like I've said this before. Like, I had to learn that it didn't matter how equally yoked we were. We were going to have different perspective on stuff, and sometimes our feelings would get hurt. That was just life. That's sometimes how stuff happens. Another thing I had to learn was to make time for each other. We are always encouraged to have date nights, but not how you think. We're encouraged to have date nights through what we see on social media. We see people, flexing for the gram and posting their vacation pictures, and we're kind of like, well, kind of want to do that. Can we do that? But the truth is, date night is not always easy. Think about it. If you're just starting out in your business, or if you have a 9 to 5 that requires you to be in at your desk at a certain time every day, date night is not going to always be easy. The goal is to make it be intentional. So while you might not have the time or the resources to fly to Bali or to lay on a beach somewhere or to go to a very expensive and exquisite restaurant, y'all can cuddle up in the couch and watch a few episodes of BMF. As long as it's intentional and you guys are getting what you need out of each other, that's what matters. It does not have to be expensive. It just needs to be thoughtful. Another thing, and I think this part is one of the most important parts, another thing that I was not prepared for was the marriage. I was prepared for the wedding, not the marriage. And Khadeen talked about that in their book. She talked about how she envisioned her wedding. She talked about the dress and the bridesmaid dresses and the florists and all these extravagant things that come with planning a wedding. But no one ever took her to the side to say, hey, this is what you are to expect after the wedding. Once y'all are married, once the honeymoon phase wears out, once reality kicks in, once it's time to get back to work. And I agreed with everything she said because we were so predisposed to thinking about what a marriage was supposed to be. We never actually learned what it was supposed to be. Granted, we've gone through premarital counseling and we've learned to work on things like communication, but actually adapting to life as husband and wife, there was no rule book. There was no game plan. We were winging it. It was so different. Khadeen made a very excellent point that Disney set us up. Disney came out with this whole mantra of the happily ever after. And I talked about that in one of my other videos too. But they didn't tell us that after we ride off into the sunset, that's when the work actually starts. You see, similarly to Devale, my husband was very focused on the finances while I was very focused on just living my best life. I wasn't focusing on the goals and what we're going to do together. I just thought that I struggled through most of my life and now I'm married. You're going to take care of me and everything's going to be all right. You go figure it out. Super selfish. I told y'all I'm technically not supposed to still be married. My husband had to think about buying the ring, uprooting his life to another state, leaving New York to come and be with me where I was. And he just wanted to make sure he could provide and give me a good life. One of the first things that he did was he gave me the choice of having my dream wedding. And I say my because I was super selfish and I never really allowed him to get much of what he wanted. I was such a different person. It was either the dream wedding or a house. Now, here's the kicker. We were already married. We had eloped the year before, and technically, we didn't really need all that stuff. But I was so adamant based on what I envisioned since a child. Like, I needed to have my dream wedding. We went ahead. We had the dream wedding. We went all out. We had a blast. And then the world shut down less than a month later. Reality slapped the shit out of us and we had to figure out how we were going to survive. And on top of all of that, I was pregnant. This is what they never taught us. This is what they never shared with us. Once we got married, we were, for a lack of a better word, on our own. Not that we didn't have support from family, but we had to figure out how to do life together. And right before the world shut down, we were getting ready to sue my then employer. Story time. I was pregnant, as was my colleague who was sitting in the cubicle right next to me. We both started having complications and issues in our pregnancies that needed us to be able to work virtually. So this is before the world shut down and working virtually was not that popular. So I followed the chain of command and I submitted my medical information to prove to the company why I needed to be able to work remote, as did my colleague. My colleague's situation required her to frequent the bathroom very often. So for her, as the further along she got in her pregnancy, it became more difficult for her to, walk fast. You know how it is with us pregnant women when we get pregnant. It becomes difficult for her to move around. So they allowed her to work from home. But when it was my turn, I was denied. But my situation, in my opinion, was worse. My placenta, the thing inside me that was attached to the umbilical cord that would give the baby nutrients from me, was not implanted in the right place. And because it wasn't I risked having the baby fall out of me. It was required for me to get on bed rest or they were going to have to sew my cervix up. My job did not care. They were like, look, you need to be at work on Monday. If you're not going to be here, then we need to find someone else who could do your job, pretty much. I was pissed off. I was pissed off for the mere fact that the colleague, whose only issue was that she had to use the bathroom very frequently, was white. And here I am, a Black woman with a child about to fall out of me, and they did not care. But I should have known this was the norm after all, because my supervisor was pregnant with twins and they ran her into the ground until she ended up having a miscarriage. So it should not have surprised me. And yes, she was Black. And it should not have surprised me that they would have dealt with me the same way. My husband and I started the process to file an action against the company and the world shut down. We made a decision together where we, for the first time without the input of our families or our friends, we made the decision that it was best for me not to go back to work. Instead, my husband encouraged me to chase my dreams. While he would hold everything down, he would make sure everybody was good, and he wanted me to chase my dreams. I had the option now of building a business, going back to school, becoming a therapist, all these things that probably would have never been an option for me had I still been working at this place. So marriage prepared us for a lot. And even though we didn't get all the tools and everything that we needed right off the bat, we were able to grow together and learn together. And my hope is that after watching this video, that you guys will understand as well that relationships are gonna go through stuff, but it's up to you to determine how you're gonna learn from this. There's always a good in all of this. There's always something you can learn. There's always something that you can appreciate from going through these different things in the relationship. So I just want to say thank you to Khadeen and Devale and Melissa and Kevin for opening their lives and sharing with us things that most people are afraid to open up and talk about. You guys have made such a tremendous impact in the lives of so many people, myself included. And my hope is that as time goes on, we'll continue to create a safe space for people who may not be comfortable with opening up about their personal relationship issues. So guys, if you have not gotten their books yet, I have put the link in the show notes. Check out Melissa and Kevin's book, Marriage Be Hard, and check out Khadeen and Devale's book, Me Over We. These are such insightful books that give us a different perspective of marriage, especially marriage from a millennial perspective. Thank you guys for tuning into this episode, and I really do hope to hear from y'all. Tell me what you think about the episode in the comments. And of course, if you're following me on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. Until we meet again, see y'all next week.